Hi, everyone. Just kind of waiting for this thing to pop up. I'm not sure if we'll get that initial part or not. Welcome to the third installment of Numbers, and this is our outline. We start out with chapter 1 through verses, or chapter 1 through 4. So what's happened so far is this. Moses, this guy who was part of who was a prince of Egypt, as to borrow the name from the movie theater, or from the movie. Prince of Egypt comes up, disappears. Rumor has it by the Jews that he killed someone, and now he's back and he's saying, you know what, all you guys, you don't have to be slaves anymore. I'm getting you out of here. And he challenges the Pharaoh, and he beats the Pharaoh. And so they take off, and here comes Pharaoh, and he beats him again. Well, actually, God, of course, beats him again. So all of these people, these 2 to 3 million Jews or so, are following Moses, and so they're going just pretty much on his word of what's going on with things. And so he literally lays down the law, literally lays down the law, and you have all of these things that he says are from God. You're going to do this and this and this and this, and you're not going to do this. You're not going to bear false witness. You're not going to commit adultery. Things such as that. Things which were common among the Egyptian people, and things that the Israelites in all likelihood grew up with. And so here we are now in Mount Sinai, or around Mount Sinai, and he's saying, okay, way back when, remember that our ancestor Abraham was promised by God a land flowing with milk and honey. We're going to go there, right? But I need you to follow me. I need you to do what I need you to do the things that I tell you, because these are from God. He's pulling the God card in the ultimate way here, And so, but he backs it up. Of course, he doesn't have the Holy Spirit. He doesn't have the Bible to rely on. And actually, he's going to end up writing the first books of the Old Testament. In fact, already in the process of doing so, probably at this time. And so, but he does have miracles. Lots of miracles to fall back on, to remind the people that he is God's spokesman. He is God's prophet. And so where we are right now in chapter 1 and in chapter 2, what he did was what God did through Moses was set things out. And a reminder, God is a God of order and preparation, and we would do well to follow this order. The outline, we looked at the order of inventory. And then we looked at the order of encampment. And now we're going to look at the order of ministry today. So again, here is a map of the wilderness, and they are right here. And eventually they're going to get to here. But they're still right here because God is setting things up for them. And we talked about the significance to the dates and so forth. This is the promised land. All of the area from the Nile to the Euphrates and to where the sun sets. This is where the land that God has promised Israel. No time limit on it. So technically, at least according to God, Israel is not this. Israel is this. We talked about the big deal of the promised land. We talked about the significance of the men leading the tribes. Why did God take a census? Seems like it would have taken a long time. Probably not. Probably didn't really take much that long at all. Here are the tribe, or the names according to the census. Here's the birth order. Here's the population. We went through all of that. And we talked about the tribes and how they were listed and so forth. A lot of Israelites. Then we talked about just the idea of it's possible to have that many Israelites in such short of a span, which was either about 200 years or about 400 years, depending on how you consider the time spans, if you will. We talked about it in the previous 2 Bible studies, so feel free to reference back to those. But they got that way through exponential growth, and that was the little video that I showed here, how to get someone folding paper to the moon, and that's through what's called exponential growth, which is the whole idea of the COVID-19 thing and why we needed to flatten the curve and things like that. Where did Joseph go? We talked about where he disappeared from the tribes. And Levi, what happened to Levi? Well, Levi we're getting to today, as a matter of fact. All right, it's the order of encampment. Where's God in all this process? We talked about this. And we talked about the order of encampment. Maybe in the form of a cross, maybe in the form of a square, not sure. But either way, some very interesting things with regard to that. there was some very prophetic and symbolic things having to go on with the order that went on with the order of encampment. And so, and we talked a lot about those last Bible study. So now we finally move on to the order of ministry. And this is chapter 3 and then through chapter 4. And what we have is we start talking now about the Levites. And in chapter 3, it begins, this is the account of the family of Aaron and Moses at the time the Lord spoke to Moses at Mount Sinai. The names of the sons of Aaron were Nadab, the firstborn, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. Those were the names of Aaron's sons, the anointed priests who were ordained to serve as priests. Nadab and Abihu, however, died before the Lord when they made an offering with unauthorized fire before him in the desert of Sinai. They had no sons, so Eleazar and Ithamar served as priests during the lifetime of their father Aaron. And we'll touch on that here shortly. Then in verse 5, the Lord said to Moses, bring the tribe of Levi and present them to Aaron the priest to assist him. They are to perform duties for him and for the whole community at the tent of the meeting by doing the work of the tabernacle. They are to take care of all furnishings of the tent of meeting, fulfilling the obligations of the Israelites by doing the work of the tabernacle. Give the Levites to Aaron and his sons. They are the Israelites who are to be given wholly to him. Appoint Aaron and his sons to serve as priests. Anyone else who approaches the sanctuary is to be put to death. So you have Aaron and his sons and the Levites. They're the ones to approach the sanctuary. I'm presuming Moses is included in that as well. But I just now realize that, and I'm not 100% sure about that. So we'll see. Anyway, chapter 11, verse 11, the Lord said to Moses, I've taken the Levites from among the Israelites in place of the first male offspring of every Israelite woman. The Israelites are mine, for all the firstborn are mine. When I struck down all the firstborn in Egypt, I set apart for myself every firstborn in Israel, whether human or animal. They are to be mine. I am the Lord. So I'm going to stop here, and I think I already touched on this question here a little bit later on. If you go back to a previous screen, quite a ways back actually here, and you look at these are the verses according to what we have here. And if they're not coming up real good on the screen, I apologize for that. But again, they are in old Bible studies. All right, but you have Reuben, Simeon, Gad, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Ephraim, Manasseh, Benjamin, Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. All right, no Levi. Where's Levi? Well, this is where Levi is. He is not to be counted in the census because he has a special place. The tribe of Levi has a special place in God's plan with regard to how things are going to happen. Another just side note here, you have Ephraim and Manasseh. There is no Joseph. That's because those two guys, they took the place of Joseph as far as being considered the 12 tribes of Israel for purposes of the census. All right, so going back to the verse, then, so why Levi? Well, we'll talk about Levi and his history a little bit, just Levi the person and then Levi the tribe. We'll talk about that as well. But why were the Levites not counted? And again, we'll get to that here shortly. But as a side note here, the reason why he said that what the Lord said to Moses was, bring the tribe of Levi and present them to Aaron and the priest. There to perform the duties for him and the whole community. So basically, the tribe of Levi is replacing all of the firstborn of all of Israel, because when God had Passover, when God instituted Passover and took all of the firstborn of everything, all the animals and so forth in Egypt, he didn't exclude the Israelites. In fact, what he did is he just said, we're going to get back to that later. But the Israelites were not exempt from him saying, I'm claiming the firstborn. Now, what he did with the Egyptian firstborn is he killed all of them. But what he did as punishment for how the Egyptians had treated Israel. But what he did with the Israelites, he still said, yeah, you still owe me your firstborn. But what I'm doing is, rather than taking all of your firstborn, I'm going to take a tribe, which is the Levites, and they are going to be mine. They are going to serve me. And that's the trade-off between the firstborn. And so so basically the Israelites, the firstborn equals the Levites is what we have here. Okay. Let's see. The Lord said to Moses, verse 14, in the desert of Sinai, count the Levites by their families and clans, count every male a month old or more. You'll recall, first of all, that in this situation, it was 20 years old and more was the original census for the non-Levite tribes. Well, here it's a month old or more. Remember that basically in the other census, they were being conscripted for purposes of potentially serving in the army. And so you're not going to have a month-old serving in the army, of course, right? But in the situation here, basically God is saying, yeah, they're a month old or more. Why month? Why not just write out I'm not really sure. There's probably a reason for it. I didn't look that up. My apologies. But basically, pretty much their whole life, they are mine. They're conscripted to me. What's more important, the physical human act of war or the spiritual act of worship, right? So more important set on the act of worship than on the physical act of the war. Let's see here. A month old or more, so Moses counted them as he was commanded by the word of the Lord. And so the names of the sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. And then the names of the Gershonite clans are Libni and Shimei. The Kohathite clans, Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uzziel. And then the Merarite clans, Mali and Mushi. Those are the Levite clans according to their families. And then he starts, they count all of the, and then verses 21, I'm going to skip through some stuff, 21 through 37, it starts talking about to Gershon and Kohath and Merari in these three groups. He gives them certain things and where they're going to camp. The Gershonite clans were camped west behind the tabernacle. But what you have here is we go back to that cross, but here's the tabernacle, and the tabernacle is center. It's the center of everything. God is the center of everything. And around here is going to be the Levites. They're going to be around, sorry, the chicken scratch. And then outside of that, those are the 12, the other 12, the 12 tribes of Israel around there. Again, could be a square, could be a cross. And it also then in those verses talks about what the Gershonites and the Kohathites and stuff, what they were responsible for. In verse 38, Moses and Aaron and his sons were to camp to the east of the tabernacle toward the sunrise in front of the tent of the meeting. They were responsible for the care of the sanctuary on behalf of the Israelites. Anyone else who approached the sanctuary was to be put to death. So it says Moses and Aaron and his sons. So they were to camp east of the tabernacle, which would put them, here's Moses and Aaron, and then the Levites are surrounding him. The Gershonites and the Kohathites and the Merarites would be around here. Here's the entrance of the tabernacle. So these guys, the most important people in the scheme of things, they're guarding the entrance, and everyone else is kind of around them. So answers our question, what about Moses? Would he be put to death? But apparently not, because I'm pretty sure he was involved with all the priestly duties as well, although Aaron was considered the high priest, but Moses was kind of above him as well. And again, there's that saying, anyone else who approached the sanctuary was to be put to death. A second time we see this. The total number of Levites counted at the Lord's command by Moses and Aaron, according to their clans, including everyone, was 22,000. Lord said to Moses, count all the Israelite males who are a month old and make a list of their names. Take the Levites for me in place of all the firstborn of the Israelites, and the livestock of the Levites in place of all the firstborn of the livestock of the Israelites. I am the Lord. So again, a trade-off. Instead of all the firstborn for the Israelites and firstborn of the livestock of the Israelites, it's just the Levites, and then and the livestock of the Levites. Now it says in verse 42, so Moses counted all the firstborn of the Israelites as the Lord commanded him. A total number of firstborn males a month old or more was listed was 22,273. So we have this 22,273. Those are the firstborn of the Israelites. FBI, firstborn of the Israelites, right? Let's see. Now, in verse 44, the Lord also said to Moses, take the Levites in place of all the firstborn of Israel and the livestock, etc. Verse 46, to redeem the 273 firstborn Israelites who exceeded the number of the Levites. Because if you recall that it said that the number of Levites, and this was in verse 39, was 22,000 for a difference of 273. Okay, mathing it up here. All right. I don't have that sign up here anymore. Never mind. So you see, I have a sign. Let's math it up, and I don't have that sign up anymore in my classroom here. So anyway, so what to do with this 273? Well, it says what God said was to redeem the 273 firstborn Israelites who exceeded the number of the Levites. So even though there's 22,000 Israelites accounted for as far as the firstborn are concerned, there's still 273 who are unaccounted for. Every single person is being accounted for by God. Please take note of that. So what to do with this excess? Well, what's going to happen in verse 47, verse 48 is God says, collect 5 shekels for each one according to the sanctuary shekel. Give the money for the redemption of the additional Israelites to Aaron and his son. So what God did was he took 5 shekels from those 273, and that's the money that Aaron receives and his sons receive for service to the Lord. He doesn't have to, but God will pay us. Maybe not in money, but in blessings when we are willing to serve. And that's what he did with Aaron and his sons. So Moses collected the redemption money, and the silver weighing 1,365 shekels, 5 times 273. God knows math, right? And Moses gave the redemption money to Aaron as was commanded by the Lord. And so then a census took place, and then the duties were given, and to the Kohathites and the Gershonites and so forth. And so then that's this gets then into chapter 4. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, take a census of the Kohathite branch of the Levites by the clans and families. Count them, all the men from 30 to 50 years of age who come to serve and work in the tent of meeting. So from 30 to 50 years old, that's when they're actually going to be providing their service. Now, they belong to the Lord basically as soon as they're born, but they're going to be groomed at that point in time. From 0 to 30, they're groomed so that they're going to have 20 years of service into the Lord's tabernacle. And then they go to describe these things. And a lot of warnings here. If you go into, for example, in chapter 4, verse 15, after Aaron and his sons have finished covering the holy furnishings and all the holy articles, and when the camp is ready to move, only then are the Kohathites are to come and do the carrying. But they must not touch the holy things, or they will die. So the Kohathites have a duty to do some carrying, but it's only after Aaron and his sons have wrapped up the holy furnishings. So if they touch them uncovered, they're going to die. Again, the emphasis here is, boy, God sure is mean, isn't he? No, he's holy, and there are standards, and there are things that are done. And for whatever reason, these things were done to protect. I'm sure of that because God is good. He's going to protect. He's not, God is, when we say we're arbitrary with things, that means that we'll do things just on a whim. God is a purposeful God. He doesn't do things on a whim. There is a reason for the things he does. We don't always know those reasons, and it might be just to emphasize the difference between humanity and us. That's certainly a possibility, but it's not arbitrary. It's not I'm God and you're not, so there. It's not an arrogance thing, because God is who he is, and he is so fantastic and awesome and so forth that even something as seemingly cruel as this, if you will, well, it shows the awesomeness and the power of him in such a way that, look, he's not going to kill you there are rules. He's not going to kill you if you touch the covered thing. It's just if it's the uncovered stuff. So how about this? Just don't touch the uncovered stuff. You can eat from any tree in the garden, just not that one. So just one rule. Just follow that and we're good. Believe me. But I just want you to trust me. And they eat from that tree. How often does this happen with all of us, right? So he gives us these tests. He gives us these things for no other reason, just to say to us, do you trust me, right? But he also means what he says. And a lot of that happens as far as the, or you will die and things like that. And then in chapter 4, verse 34, the numbering of the Levite clans, Moses and Aaron and the leaders counted the Kohathites and so forth, and the Gershites were counted, and they were counted as the Lord commanded as the Lord commanded Moses. So the first question: why were the Levites not counted? Well, because they wouldn't be going into war. They were set apart for purposes of worship. That's why. Secondly, why Levi? Okay, well, Levi got his name because of Leah. Leah was the unloved wife of Jacob. Jacob loved Rachel. He didn't love Leah. Rachel, Leah's father, conned Jacob into marrying Leah. And so with the birth of her third son, which was Levi, she had hoped her husband would finally become emotionally attached to her. So this was third male. And she named her son Levi, which sounds similar to the Hebrew word for attached. But Jacob, it didn't matter. He continued to pour his love and attention to his other wife. And who knows, perhaps this disappointment played into the character trait that Levi is most remembered for, which is anger. How's he known for anger? Well, Levi went with his next oldest brother, Simeon. They became sort of known for their wrath and fury because Dinah, this goes into Genesis chapter 34. Genesis chapter 34. And so what happened was Dinah was violated by Shechem. And so Levi and Simeon decided to take the law into their own hands. In fact, it turned out that Shechem said he loved her anyway and so forth, but that they didn't buy into that. And so the older brothers weren't too pleased with this. So what happened was basically they said, Levi and Simeon said to the city that Shechem was living in at the time, they said, all right, all right, you can marry her, but first of all, you got to get circumcised just like we are. And so they did. So so everyone was willing to do it. So they all got circumcised. And so it's a rather painful process, and people are, especially if you're an adult in that situation and what's the word? Painkiller, if you will. And so they were kind of sore at the time. So what happened is on the third day after that happened, then Levi and Simeon went through the city and killed all the males. So that was in chapter 34, verse 25. So Jacob was a little concerned about that. You've brought trouble upon me by making me stink to the inhabitants of the land. If they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed. But God told Jacob to move his family to Bethel, and a terror from God fell upon the cities that were around them, so they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. This is 35:5. So Levi's bloody revenge, fortunately, did not result in the disaster for the family. So then, of course, you have the incident with Levi helping out, wanting to kill their younger brother Joseph because all the guys were jealous of him, and so forth. And that's a familiar story. So Jacob said when he was on his deathbed. Hold on a second here. Oh, so Levi had three sons. He had Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Jacob was on his deathbed. He pronounced blessings and prophecies over Simeon and Levi. He said, Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. This prophecy came true, but not necessarily as the curse was intended to be. When Moses found the Israelites worshiping the golden calf, he called, "Who is on the Lord's side?" And here is really where we get into why probably the tribe of Levi. In Exodus 32, the Israelites are worshiping a golden calf. And so Moses said, "All right, who's on the Lord's side? Come here." And all the sons of Levi gathered around them. So Moses instructed them to kill their brethren who were responsible for turning away from God. 3,000 Israelites died that day. So the Levites said, "Yeah, we're in." And they proceeded to extract revenge or extract vengeance on behalf of the Lord. And here is one of those things where Joseph said, "You meant this for evil, but God meant it for good," or we know that all things work together for those who love the Lord and so forth. God takes something that's bad and turns it into good. So the family trait of violent anger was harnessed in zeal for the Lord. These same people who were known for their violence, who were known for their, but the flip side of violence is zeal. All right, that's the good part of it. And what God is doing is he's using that zeal and he's channeling it into worship. Only God, right? Only God. So Levi is remembered as Jacob's third son and head of the tribe of Levites, whose anger was passed down in such a way as to become passionate zeal for the Lord, thus earning his descendants the role of priests among the people. Among the Levites, Moses, Aaron, Barnabas, and John the Baptist were from the tribe of Levi. Interesting. Why did God have the Levites do this? As mentioned, because of his religious zeal. But also, again, it goes back to something I just said. He didn't exclude Israel from claiming all the firstborn in Egypt. The Lord also said to Moses, "I have taken," this is 11 through 15, "I have taken the Levites from among the Israelites in place of the first male offspring of every Israelite woman. The Levites are mine, for all the firstborn are mine. When I struck down all the firstborn in Egypt, I set apart for myself every firstborn in Israel, whether human or animal. They're to be mine, I am the Lord." Plus, Aaron couldn't manage all this himself. He needed help, just like Moses needed help with kind of governing. And so this is a big job, and it was very structured and very organized, and that's what chapter 3 talks about. Let's see. In chapter 3, verses 1 and 2, it speaks of Aaron's first two sons dying because of a strange or unauthorized fire. What's that? Well, if you go to Leviticus 10, verses 1 through 3, Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, took their censers, put fire in them, and added incense, and they offered unauthorized fire before the Lord, contrary to his command. So fire came out of the presence of the Lord and consumed them, and they died before the Lord. Moses then said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord spoke of when he said, 'Among those who approach me, I will be proved holy in the sight of all the people. I will be honored.' Aaron remained silent." So in other words, in other words, what happened was they put some incense and they tried to burn this incense, and it was not acceptable to God. And so God consumed them with fire. And so Aaron was trying to figure out what happened. And Moses said to him, "This is what the Lord spoke of when he said, 'Among those who approach me, I will be proved holy in the sight of all the people. I will be honored.'" In other words, he was saying to Aaron, "I'm really sorry, but God said this, and this is what he meant." And this is probably similar to Exodus 9. That's not a direct quote from somewhere else in the Bible, but there's something similar to it. In Exodus 19:22, it says, "Also let the priests who come near the Lord consecrate themselves, or else the Lord will break out against them." So, basically, like I said, they were required to be holy, and so if not, the consequence was death. In the case of Aaron's son, they dishonored the Lord by obeying his command to use only fire from the brazen altar in the tabernacle, and that's in Leviticus 16:12. They used a different, so that's probably what was meant by strange or unauthorized fire, is that they offered it from another source. So strict, yes, but again, God makes this clear. It wasn't a surprise. This was something that he said, if you do this, this is going to happen. And God is a God of his word. He never doesn't keep his word. He always keeps his promises. And sometimes his promises are bad in our estimation. But again, they serve a purpose. Now, as far as the census and so forth, it says in verse 3, verses 14 through 16, there's a census of the Levites. Yes, and like I said, the interesting difference there, 1 month older and up, not 20 years and up. Remember, these are for Lord, not going into war. But on the other hand, it says only Moses did the census, not Aaron. That was interesting to me. Why is that? Well, probably to keep Aaron from, who was going to supervise the tabernacle, from stumbling into sin. That's my guess, and this is a personal opinion. Okay, because in verses 40 through 51 in chapter 3, God has Moses count the firstborn of the tribes, and the firstborn outnumbered the Levites by 273. And this is verse 39 and 43. Each of those 273 firstborn was worth 5 shekels to Aaron and his sons. So would Aaron have miscounted? All right, perhaps God did not want to put him in that position. All right, and that's my guess, because Aaron's human, and if he works on taking the census, 222,283, a little bit more money for him. God didn't even want to put him in that position. So Moses did the census in that case. Plus, it was only one tribe versus all of the tribes, so he could do that, and that allowed Aaron to focus purely on priestly duties. Again, I'm speculating here, but I did find it interesting why it was just Moses versus Aaron, and I find that maybe this is kind of a reasonable explanation. A side note, by the way, if you look at the clan numbers in 22, 28, and 34, they total differently than the rounded 22,000. There is an explanation for this. If you get nitpicky in that, on verse 22, the Gershonites have 7,500. There's a small discrepancy in the Hebrew letters, and this gets in the thickets of things. Would have the translator misread a 500 where there should have been a 200. Okay, so in other words, there's a 300-person difference. So point being is, that means the Bible has an error. No, remember that the original manuscripts were considered inerrant. So this small translating error, whereas it's read to be a 500 instead of a 200. And some manuscripts or some commentators say this is certainly a possibility. If you look at the Greek letter or at the Hebrew letter, it's just a slight little difference here. Again, it's the original manuscripts were inerrant, so there could be a little bit of a translating error. It's possible. The translations were never considered to be inerrant. So, and plus, this is a small translating error and a minor thing, and it doesn't invalidate anything. It doesn't disprove or contradict or anything like that. So, a little bit of humanity inserted into things here. Next question: why was Eleazar special? Eleazar is mentioned in 332 and 416 is having some special duties. He was the heir apparent to Aaron because remember he was the third oldest, but the first two had been consumed by God's fire, and so he was the oldest living. He was in a sense the de facto firstborn. And in Numbers 20, as we'll see, when Aaron dies, Eleazar takes over as the high priest. So that's chapter 4 and chapter 3. The takeaways today. Again, hopefully we know that God is a God of order and preparation. If God says something, it's best to obey. And he also means it too. We all have a role to play in God's service, whether it's the role of a priest or in war or something different. But we have to obey. Just because he calls us is no guarantee of our success. If we disobey, then we risk rejection. Of everyone counted in this census, and this is interesting, of everyone counted in this census, including Moses and Aaron, only 2 people entered the promised land and did so because of their obedience. God's servants are not exempt from judgment. And I'll let you figure out who those 2 people will be. And if you want, send me a message or an email saying those 2, who you think they were. Lastly, there's a price to pay to be with God. And when God does this, when God pays that price, we are his. God made a one-for-one substitution for the firstborn of Israel with the Levites. The remaining 273 were bought with redemption money. And this reminds me of 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 19 through 20. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You are bought with a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. So as we go out today, let's remember that we are bought with a price. In our case, it's the sacrifice of Jesus dying on the cross for us, and we are no longer our own, we are God's. Let's choose to act that way. Lord, we thank you for this Bible study, and we pray that your blessing upon it. We pray that your word will reach far and deep, Lord, and convict and encourage. And we thank you for it in your Son's name. Amen. Goodbye, everyone. Have a good week. We'll continue on with Numbers. In the meantime, I love you, and I miss you, and we'll be praying for you.